It's draft night in 2013, and news breaks that the Boston Celtics are trading away the two faces of the franchise that helped deliver a title just 5 years prior, being Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett, to the Brooklyn Nets. You probably know what Boston ended up getting in return and how it changed both franchises' future forever. But we need to go back to see how and why this trade went down. The prior season, Boston got knocked out in a 6-game first-round series versus the Carmelo Anthony-led Knicks. Garnett was an all-star, and while Pierce missed the team, he still had a pretty good season playing 77 games and averaging 19 points per game. For the Nets, that 2012-13 season was the team's first in Brooklyn after leaving New Jersey, and it was a major success. They won 49 games, an increase from just a 22-44 record this season prior, as they were led by 6-time All-Star Joe Johnson, Darren Williams, and Brook Lopez. And interim head coach PJ Carlesimo rallied them to win 35 of their last 49 games after replacing Avery Johnson earlier in the season. They did lose in the first round to the Bulls in a hard-fought 7-game series, but the future looked bright. Then came the 2013 NBA draft in the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, where the trade went down. The Nets received Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Jason Terry, and DJ White, while Boston got Chris Humphries, Marshawn Brooks, Chris Joseph, had to take on Gerald Wallace's 3-year, $30 million contract, and then Brooklyn's 2014, 2016, and 2018 first-round picks, in addition to get the right to swap first-round picks in 2017. And at the time, as crazy as it is to believe, people thought Boston was the team who got fleeced. That including one of the biggest and most well-known Celtics fans and NBA media personality Bill Simmons, who said, "That rumored Celtics-Nets trade is so bad for Boston that Doc Rivers just quit on the Celtics again." Yeah, yikes. Now, entering the following season, the Nets, with their new additions, despite Pierce being 36 and Garnett 37, combined with keeping faces of last year's playoff team such as ISO Joe, Brook Lopez, and Darren Williams, were expected to compete with the defending champion Miami Heat, even being given the 4th best title odds in the entire NBA at plus 1200, with an over-under win total at 52.5. On the other end, Boston had just hired Brad Stevens to replace Doc and fully embraced the rebuild, winning just 25 games that season. Now, back to Brooklyn, things took an unexpected turn, although looking back in hindsight, seemed obvious. The 37-year-old Garnett would deal with a back injury the whole season, playing just 54 games, and even in those contests, was on a minutes restriction. His minutes played per game dropped from 30 in Boston in 2013 to just 21 that season, with his scoring also plummeting in half from 14 points per game to just 6. And while Pierce was a little better, he still regressed substantially, averaging just 13 points per game himself, down from 19 in 2013. As for the team as a whole, a early season win in Miami versus the champs provided some excitement, but that quickly disappeared following 3 blowout losses to all NBA bottom feeders in the Magic, Kings, and Timberwolves to start off the year 3-10. They would rally to a 24-27 record by the All-Star break and ultimately finish off strong, going 44-38, and even win a playoff series, defeating the young Raptors in 7 games. But would get humiliated in round 2 to LeBron and the Big Three in Miami, losing in 5. Flash forward to draft night in 2014, where Boston would be making its first pick from the trade, where they would select James Young. This was a big miss as he played just 3 seasons in Boston, averaging 2 points per game. Also that offseason began the demise of the Nets' quote-unquote super team, as Pierce was a free agent and left for Washington to sign a 2-year deal. And while KG was under contract for 1 more season, he would be traded to Minnesota at the deadline in 2015. That season, Brooklyn would once again make the playoffs, sneaking in as a 38-win 8th seed, but only to lose to the 60-win Hawks in round 1. Now, with all the players gone Brooklyn had received from the trade, they began to fall apart as Boston began its ascension. While they started off that 2014-15 season going just 20-33, they would make a deadline trade for Phoenix Suns guard Isaiah Thomas that would lift them to rally off 20 wins in their last 29 games to hilariously enough surpass the Nets in the standings and earn the number 7 seed. And although they were also first round exits being swept by the Cavs, it was becoming evident who won the trade. Heading into the 2015-16 season, let's focus on those 2 remaining draft picks in the pick swap. And like mentioned earlier, the 2014 pick was obviously a huge miss, but they would now have 3 consecutive seasons of control on Brooklyn's draft picks. Pair that with the fact that things are already on the up and up for the squad, as they had just seemed to find their franchise player with IT. And they would win 48 games that season, but still unfortunately be knocked out in the first round in 6 games by the Atlanta Hawks. But luckily, they had struck gold, with Brooklyn winning just 21 games due to the departure of Darren Williams the prior summer and a mid-season trade to ship Joe Johnson. So with them finishing with the 3rd worst record in the league and the draft lottery going accordingly, the Celtics would land the 3rd overall pick. With that, they selected a forward from Cal by the name of Jaylen Brown. And while he averaged just 7 points a night his rookie season, that was largely due to the fact that Boston was a contending team who won 53 games, earning the number 1 seed in the East. They would even make the conference finals, but couldn't get past the LeBron-led Cavs. But good thing for them, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't really matter. As remember the pick swap they had with Brooklyn in 2017, meaning the teams could swap first round picks? Well, they had a 20-62 record, the worst in the NBA. So once the draft lottery concluded and the lottery went according to plans again for the C's as they earned the number 1 pick via Brooklyn, they swapped, giving the Nets the 27th pick. And in another draft trade, Boston would actually move back to number 3 in the draft, swapping picks with Philadelphia, acquiring another future first-round pick. Somehow, still ending up with the best player in the draft, selecting Jason Tatum, while Philly chose Markelle Fultz first overall. It's crazy to think this is the return they yielded for 36 and 37-year-old players, because that other 2018 first-round pick ending up landing 8th overall, although being traded by Boston to get Kyrie Irving, was Cavs guard Colin Sexton. So hypothetically, the Nets could have had Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Colin Sexton. But you have to give the Nets credit, as they've managed to redeem themselves after making a move that seemed motivated by the pressure to contend immediately in a new market. They've made smart trades, developed guys they've drafted in the 2nd round, and ultimately rebuilt the team's reputation so they could use being in NYC to attract stars. And of course, the reason I'm making this video, the Boston Celtics now find themselves in the NBA Finals with a real chance to knock off the Warriors, even though I got Golden State. Still, their 2 stars and cornerstones are 25 or younger. Marcus Smart isn't going anywhere. Rob Williams is young. I mean, they'll be here for at least the next 5 to 7 years. Alright, that's gonna do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. I would greatly appreciate if you dropped a like for your guy. Subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, as I'll be dropping 3 NBA videos per week. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.
Did you guys hear that the Celtics traded their 2 best players in the last 20 years for 3 meaningless draft picks and one of the worst contracts in the league? Because it's just starting to set in for me.